Does Telstra's new Telstra Plus points scheme add up?
And a basic NBN 12 meg plan's about to die?
Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by NetComm, taking Australian technology to the global market.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined as always by Adam Turner, a man who is on a lifelong quest to make the perfect bacon and egg roll for breakfast. So, Adam, I guess this means you must be in the perfect position to let the listeners know. Which did come first, the chicken or the egg?
Look, what they do in the privacy of their own home is none of my business. I don't want to get involved with that.
Fair enough, fair enough. Now, this week, we're joined in the Vertical Hold virtual studios, try saying that 5 times fast, by news.com.au tech reporter Nick Whigham. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks very much for having me.
We're going to look at the details, such as they are, for Telstra's new Telstra Plus scheme, as well as the state of play for folks who only want a basic NBN service later in the show. But first, time to check out this week's technology news. Adam, what's happening in tech?
Power Gmail users are in mourning this week as Google finally kills off its must-love experimental Inbox app as part of its ongoing cull of underperforming Google services. Inbox was released 5 years ago to give Gmail users a cleaner view of their Gmail account, and it's gathered a loyal following in the Marie Kondo age of decluttering. Google is committed to bringing some of Inbox's most popular features over to the basic Gmail interface, but for now the Inbox faithful are feeling a little unloved.
Apple's AirPower is no more. Just as the company finally released its wireless AirPods, it also rather more quietly indicated that it wouldn't be able to bring its wireless AirPower charger, originally touted as the one-stop wireless charger you'd need to charge AirPods, Apple Watches and iPhones, to market. While Apple hasn't elaborated as to what went wrong with the AirPower project, many speculated that power safety regulations and the need to stay within the Qi specification may have made for a product that simply couldn't do what Apple claimed it might.
What's an AirPower? Australia's federal government is pushing through new laws, making it a criminal offence for online platforms to fail to rapidly remove abhorrent violent material, including videos of terrorist attacks and murders. The Unlawful Showing of Abhorrent Violent Material Bill threatens financial penalties and even jail time for social media services which host and stream such content. They risk fines of up to 10% of their annual turnover if they fail to remove violent content expeditiously. Similar to Australia's controversial encryption interception laws, the practicalities of the new laws have been questioned by the technology industry, but regardless, the opposition joined with the government to pass the bill despite conceding that the proposed laws are flawed.
The federal budget contained just a few key measures aimed at the technology world. In the NBN space, the subsidy for regional NBN services, fixed wireless and satellite specifically, will drop to $7.10, down from $10. The government's loan terms of some $20 billion to NBN Co will now stretch out to 2024, and there's $7.2 million going to the ACMA to deal with telco complaints. The ABS will also see $38.3 million dropped into its coffers to strengthen its internal security ahead of the 2021 census. So, Adam, we've seen a lot of government legislation aimed at regulating the online world, and I don't think there's a reasonable position to say that, violent or terrorist material shouldn't be on the internet. But is this new unlawful showing of abhorrent violent material bill actually going to make a big difference?
It feels like that classic example of the government trying to put through legislation that they either don't understand the technicalities of what they're asking for, or they choose not to understand the technicalities of what they're asking for because they know that it sounds good. And it's frustrating because as you say, anyone who tries to question this, it's like, well, what are you, a terrorist? Like, do you want these things online? Of course, nobody wants these things online, but it's very difficult these days to have a sensible conversation about this stuff. Nick, we saw what happened after the massacre with people claiming that Facebook shouldn't have let this person keep streaming for half an hour or however long they streamed. How practical is it for someone like Facebook to be able to catch these things quickly?
Yeah, it's a big ask, isn't it? Obviously, they've put out the fact that they stopped a majority of these videos being posted online in the first place. I think they said 1.5 million, and there's only about 200,000 or something that got up initially. So obviously, they have algorithms and a whole team of people working on this sort of thing. But I mean, it's a big ask to stop it completely. So I mean, dangling the threat of fines and jail time, it seems like a bit much.
It's not really realistic for Facebook to have human moderators watching every live stream all the time to check that nothing untoward is happening, is it?
Exactly. I mean, I think you've really got to ask some questions of Labor here as well. We saw this with the encryption bill as well. Like they had raised a number of concerns, and they clearly had issues with how it had been drafted and the finer details of the how it was going to work on a technical end and some of the definitions involved in the legislation. But yet they were pretty happy to wave it through, which, as you say, because it's this political football that the government and I guess the opposition wants to look and act like they're tough on this sort of thing. And I just think the intention, or at least the headlines, don't sort of match the reality.
It's an interesting one as well, in light of that op-ed that Mark Zuckerberg wrote about
Mm.
wanting more government regulation. Although in his case, I don't think he was looking to let's just have one bill in Australia. He wanted kind of global regulation. So I think the tech companies are they're aware of the problems here, and I wonder if it's not one of those issues where it's also a little bit of buck passing to say, well, we're trying to do what we can, and the government, as you say, they're trying to appear strong on this kind of material, as is Labor. And let's face it, at the moment, everything is a political football with an election looming. I wonder if it's one of those problems, though, that is not necessarily 100% solvable, but something like this is a step towards it.
I guess that's what the government's trying to do with trying to. They see a blind spot within the legislation. I know Christian Porter wants some sort of legal recourse for the government to be able to have a big stick to whack these tech companies with, and they don't want to be caught out. But you do have to wonder that without that kind of proper consultation with the industry and with those stakeholders that this could potentially affect, you wonder if this kind of legislation will ever actually be enacted or used in any real way, or if it's just sort of, I guess, all a bit of a show.
So Telstra's ramping up the charm offensive. They've introduced this new thing called Telstra Plus to try and keep their customers happy. Nick, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so this, I guess, is Telstra's third iteration of some sort of rewards type program, or sort of a program to incentivize loyalty. So it's a new reward system, and there's sort of two parts to this. You earn points as you go when you pay your Telstra bills, and those points later can be credited towards discounts on things like new handsets and new tech gadgets and accessories within their store. And also, depending on how much you spend, or with your sort of whether it's your mobile or broadband service, there's three tiers to the membership. All Telstra customers can get the basic membership, and then there's silver and gold, and they'll also be able to have access to other benefits and some entertainment bonuses and access to tickets for sporting events and movies and things like that as well.
So considering that Telstra's already one of the more expensive providers, does this actually stack up? Does this make it worth sticking with Telstra if you were thinking that maybe you might find a better deal elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a good question, I guess. I mean, this is great if you're already a Telstra customer. Like, I don't think it's going to lure you over to them at all. But if you're already a Telstra customer and you're spending this money, I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. It's about retention for Telstra. And they've sort of looked at some other rewards programs from telcos overseas in the US and Europe, and kind of tried to mimic that model. So I think one of the crucial things here for Telstra is the timing with 5G. So whenever Andy Penn talks about this, he'll always mention 5G in there as well when he's talking about some consumer-focused initiatives. And I think that is a sort of technology that, for the eager customers out there, that might draw non-Telstra customers over to them if they want to get that early access to some proper mobile 5G. And then these kind of programs, these reward systems, might help just kind of keep people with Telstra.
I think the point to make here, though, is if you look at the stats for NBN take-up, if you look at the stats for mobile take-up, Telstra still has the lion's share of both of those markets. So statistically speaking, if you're listening to this, you're probably on Telstra in some capacity, based on the overall Australian population. So there's a lot of people who could potentially benefit from this. but there's just not a lot of detail. They've said you'll get 10 Telstra points per dollar spent, but they haven't given out a lot of detail about what a point is worth. I did a bit of number crunching on this because one of the few things they said was after a certain period of time and a certain spend, you'd be able to get one of their smart Wi-Fi boosters. Nice enough little product. It has a price to it, though, so you can kind of extrapolate out how much a point is worth. And a point is, sadly, only worth a fraction of a cent. We're not talking big value here.
And the other thing that seems a bit dodgy but understandable on their part is it seems that most of the things you can spend points on are buying other products that will further lock you into the Telstra ecosystem.
Yeah, so
I'm
that's
shocked.
what this is obviously designed to do. So yeah, like I said, the Telstra did give a couple of examples. So if you spend, I think it was $80 a month for 18 months, which works out to be a bit over $1,400, you could get a smart speaker, which is very vague, but you read between the lines, and I think a Google Home Mini is $79 on the Telstra store. So it's not incredibly worthwhile, but if the point being, I guess, if you're a Telstra customer anyway, you don't have to do anything. You just got to jump in the app and sign up, and then you accrue the points as you go, like just by paying your bill. So if you just kind of forget about it, in 18 months come back, you might be able to get a little bit of a discount on a handset or something worth throwing in.
But apathy has always been Telstra's best friend. That's what they rely on. It's not very hard. This is speaking of someone who in the next couple of weeks is leaving Telstra as a home broadband customer and leaving Telstra as a mobile customer because better options have come along.
Hello,
and
Adam,
it's not that hard to find.
Can we hear you? I think he's cut out.
Because it's not that hard to find better options. And it then frustrates me to say, oh, yeah, we'll throw you some trinkets to keep paying us more than you really need to because you're too apathetic to look around and find that there are better deals elsewhere. And this whole thing about if you spend a lot of money, we'll give you a better class of customer service. Customer service has always been Telstra's weak point. So to tell me that I need to hand over even more money before you'll give me decent customer service just really rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, well, that's the other point here, isn't it? I was interested to see, I guess they launched the Platinum service, I think it was 2014, which is a bit of a cheeky thing to do to try and sort of charge for proper tech support. But I guess, it does, this will further entrench a bit of a customer car system within Telstra, that if you were just a regular Telstra customer, not spending that much money, and you're all of a sudden, you're made aware that you're not allowed to get the same kind of quality of customer service, it's interesting.
Although, will it only just be the customer service you already had? Because I believe the premium tiers they're talking about, you get a certain number of like premium escalated calls or 24/7 service, and they haven't really exactly specified how much those spend tiers are going to be.
Yeah, I think it was $125 a month in your silver and $250 in your gold.
Well, 125 on Telstra is basically a phone plan. More or less, phone plus plan, and you're getting awfully close, and a reasonable amount of data. You're getting awfully close to that. 250 is a bit more extravagant. That's certainly phone and broadband for most people, and possibly something else again. Maybe your kids on a phone or something like that. You mentioned the discounts thing, though, and I think that's where this could be really interesting. For these kind of classic point schemes, especially the airline ones, the thing that makes the most sense to use your points on there is the stuff the airline does, which is obviously, flights and flight upgrades and things like that. You're mad if you spend your flight points on speakers or gadgets. For this, though, I reckon devices, and especially Apple devices, if they offer them, are going to be where it actually makes the most sense to spend your Telstra points, because those are things that keep the value the longest.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we don't have the finer details on this, and if there's going to be a points worth this much, or they're going to sort of arbitrarily label or give certain gadgets and devices a Telstra points discount. So, this 50,000 points and you get 25% off a new iPhone. So we'll kind of wait and see there. But I think that's ultimately how people would be looking to spend these kind of points. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what. I think the second half of the year, Telstra said they will roll out their rewards store. So I guess that'll give us a bit of understanding what we can spend these on.
It would be an absolute revelation if they said a point is only ever worth this much and it's the same discount across everything. I'm pretty confident in saying that it will be an arbitrary level because that's what everyone else does, and it's relative to how much profit they can make. But you raise a good point about the store, because the other difference here to schemes people might already be in. So if you've got Flybuys points, or if you do indeed have frequent flyer points with any of the schemes, you can typically use those in a lot of places. This is a one-stop shop. This is, you get your Telstra points, you spend them at the Telstra store.
Yeah, I raised that with Michael Ackland, the head of consumer for Telstra, and I think that he didn't want to be drawn into sort of the future or too far down the road in terms of this program. But I do get the impression that ultimately, in the long run, they would like to sort of leverage these points or their partnerships with other companies to be able to use these points to spend elsewhere. But I guess at this point, they've got nothing really to say on that matter. But yeah, you'd expect. I mean, in terms of these other rewards point systems out there, that is quite typical. So you wouldn't be surprised, I guess, if Telstra went down that road.
So, Alex, NBN's always copped a lot of flack over its 12 megabits plans, which really wouldn't cut it for a lot of homes. Now these plans might be on the way out. Is this a good thing, a bad thing?
Well, it depends on your perspective. Look, you're not wrong. For an awful lot of people, a 12 meg NBN plan is not really going to be enough if you want to stream stuff, or if you've got any kind of high bandwidth need. 12 meg is going to crawl. And obviously, there are still people out there on really lousy ADSL connections who are probably listening to this going, I'd kill for 12
I kill
meg.
for 12 meg, yes, so would I a couple of years ago. And that 12 meg down is also only one up as well. So your uploads are really choked as well.
Yeah, but for an awful lot of people, 12.1 is not necessarily going to cut it. 25, or arguably I would say 50, is probably the sweet spot for a lot of Australians, but that doesn't mean there aren't people out there for whom 12 is plenty. If you don't stream, if you only have limited internet presence, or you just want a little bit of broadband to go with your fixed phone service that's more important to you, then those entry-level cheap plans are exactly what you want out of the NBN. But the bad news here is that NBN Co's changed its pricing structure, and it's been doing this, in fact, for the last 12 to 18 months. Last year, it had a big focus on pushing 50 meg plans. This year, it's more pushing 100 meg plans. So we've seen discounts flow through on those plans. The discounts on 12 meg plans that NBN Co used to offer have dried up. And as a result, we've already seen two large brands, Dodo and iPrimus, both of whom are owned by Vocus, pull out of offering 12 meg plans at all. And TPG is indicating that it's going to go that way as well, basically citing the fact that they feel like they can't make any money. Nick, do you think there's a lot of pent-up demand for 12 meg plans?
Look, I mean, it's tough to say. I can't imagine that there's too many people out there that are clamouring to get on the NBN on a 12 meg plan, but obviously that does cater to a certain tier of consumer. So, yeah, look, I'm not surprised to see them go by the wayside. The NBN, like you say, has been pushing for the telcos and ISPs to draw customers to the 25 and the 50 megabits per second, and make those sort of plans more appealing. But it's interesting that the ISPs has sort of made the 12 megabit a little bit less visible. I think it was last week that ACAN, the Australian Communications and Consumer Action Network, put out a report looking at the incentives for staff to upsell people when they sign over to their broadband, and it's quite clear that they're trying to drive people towards the 25 and the 50 megabit. So, yeah, I'm not shocked to see them kind of disappear from the landscape a little bit.
I guess the thing is, and actually ACAN's said this as well, there's also, of course, a large number of people for whom those low-cost plans are the only plans they can afford. And what we're likely to see is the ISPs that keep 12 meg plans, the prices will go up. And that might make the 25, if they've got them, or the 50 plans look more appealing, because there might only be a few dollars between those. But the reality is, if all you could afford was $30 a month for NBN, and suddenly that plan costs $40, it doesn't matter that the 50 meg plan might be 45, because you couldn't afford the 40 in the first place.
And also that the 12 meg plans also might get slower as well, because they'll become more congested, because the bandwidth that the ISPs need to buy is going to become more expensive. So either you go up to a more expensive plan that you can't afford, or the slow internet that you have, it gets even slower.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And of course, you've also then got the people who would love a 50 meg service, who might pay for a 50 meg service, but then because of the nature of the technology that they're on, their line simply can't deliver it. So they could be paying for a 12 meg service and maybe only getting 10. And they're also going to be stymied by these price rises.
There's also been talk for a while about NBN introducing new entry level plans that are only 50 kilobit per second, so dial up speed connections for people who really just want a home phone. But we've heard very little about them, and I don't think they want to draw any attention to them at all. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually come along, and if they do, what kind of price they think they can charge for them.
Look, that's definitively a niche market. Certainly, with my day job hat on at Finder, we did some research into basically that home phone line market, and it just suggested that the number of people taking up just a home phone line really is going down. It doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who don't want that, but it's a shrinking market. It's not a growing market. And NBN Co still has that pressure on them because they're off budget. They've got to deliver a profit. They've got to look to raising that average revenue per user, and they do that by selling faster plans, not slower ones. Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. And as always, we'd love to get your feedback on the show, so feel free to comment via Twitter or the Vertical Hold Facebook page. Thanks to Nick for taking the time to join us.
Thanks very much, guys.
And thanks everyone for listening. Remember, we're on a big push this year to reach more people. Thanks to everyone who's given us a shout out on social media. Remember, it helps if you jump on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice and leave us a review to help spread the good word. Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by NetComm, taking Australian technology to the global market.
Now, this week, we're joined in the Vertical Hold Even I can't say it. That's grand.